Hello, everyone, and welcome for today's keynotes. We have a real pleasure to invite Pardeep Kohli, the President and Chief Executive Officer at Mavenir, to speak. You probably know about Pardeep, about his background. He's not just a seasoned CEO, is an entrepreneur at heart as well. He has lived through the different stages of Mavenir, and in 2020, I think it was elected by Fierce Wireless the most influential telecom executive. A lot to say, but we are talking about a lot of interesting things in this keynote. I'll let Pardeep say a couple of more things. The topics, as always, of the transformations of what's happening out there, the future in messaging and for the telcos. Pardeep, welcome to today's keynote.
Yes, thanks, Dario. Again, I'm Pardeep Kohli, President CEO of Mavenir. I've been with Mavenir since we started the company in 2005. I guess today we're going to discuss about the Mavenir's view of the future. As over the last 10, 15 years, the overall usage of messaging has changed significantly. There has been a paradigm shift. I guess in the past, all the messaging was between people to people. But now what we are finding is that, as more and more consumers get more comfortable with using it, and now as more businesses adopt the messaging, the overall monetization aspect of messaging has changed from consumers to the business messaging. And with all the OTT players offering messaging for free, it's tough for operators to make money from just offering consumer messaging. But what we are finding is that the businesses have started taking big advantage, and this has caused the paradigm shift. This has also increased the value of the messaging, because if you can start doing business transactions, then it becomes really important, and the messaging becomes like a critical asset to conclude on a business transaction, and that has significantly increased the value of the messaging overall. With 5G, there is actually more increased opportunities. 5G offers a much bigger pipe, which means that now, rather than only dealing with the simple text messages, we can also look at having rich experiences which involve multimedia. And of course, what we are finding is that as more and more people get comfortable using different type of OTT services and using the messaging for different type of uses, the overall conversational commerce will explode. And that's we are in early stage of a big paradigm shift, and I definitely see over the next few years we'll see a lot of innovation happening in the messaging. Moving on to next slide. What we are finding is 89% of the consumers want to interact with business via text, and it's really started when people start becoming more comfortable interacting with each other on messaging rather than making voice calls. And what we are finding is that number of e-commerce companies like Shopify or LivePerson, they are actually interacting more and more with the actual subscribers or consumers using the simple messaging, and then that's becoming a more prominent channel for consumers to interact with businesses. Go to the next slide. So what's really happening is that messaging is becoming more conversational, which means that the way people and it's also given that everybody's becoming more comfortable using it, the convenience of interacting with somebody, whether on the other side of the channel, whether it's a consumer, a friend or a business, it becomes easier to have a conversation, and they're using many channels, right? So depending upon the countries, geographies, people are either using WhatsApp or Facebook Messengers or Line or different type of other applications as well. And in some cases, the actual consumer may be on many different channels, right? So you may have a WhatsApp account, as well as, of course, you always have an SMS, but you may have many different applications, and you may be interacting with different people using different ways of communicating with them. And what that caused is that now the overall messaging paradigm. See, in the past, when I remember our first message was sent, and it was simply a text message, and you could just only interact using the same common user interface, which was limited to 160 characters. Now, with all the OTT applications coming in, the actual P2P messaging has become like more community. So, for example, I have a lot of relatives in India, and we have a WhatsApp group which actually interacts with the people, in my group and the family. Similarly, with some other set of people, we use Viber, right? Whether it's business communications or it's just a familiarity with the different type of geographies, people are using different type of applications, and that actually makes it difficult for businesses to interact with the consumer, because they have to kind of select where the consumer may be at a particular time, or what is the most preferred way of interacting with a particular consumer. Of course, what we are finding is SMS is still the fallback position, because if you don't know, whether somebody has WhatsApp or not, or whether it's convenient to interact with them on that channel, you can always start with doing an SMS. But overall, the overall messaging has become a lot more fragmented as compared to the way it was, when it all started. So what that makes, I guess, important for the business is that as they look forward, to be able to handle with multiple channels and the way different people communicate, you need to have one set of common unified API to a platform, which can then offer a capability to interact between the business and the consumer or different channels, right? And this is where we are actually doing a lot of work and in creating a platform, creating an API, which we can then expose to the businesses. And using that API, they can interact with the consumers, which could be on different, way of communicating with the networks. So that's where it's really important to offer a very consistent experience, even though it's multi-channel. So you could actually, depending upon whether you're using the Google RCS or Apple Business Chat or Facebook Messenger, from a business who wants to communicate with the consumer, they use a common API. From a consumer side, we may see a different presentation, because now you're using the clients which coming from different vendors, and it may have a different user experience and look and feel. But as far as the capability to complete the transaction, that does not or should not change whether you're using a Google Android phone or an Apple phone, right? And how you're interacting with with the business should stay consistent. So this is where to achieve this, you require a common set of API, but and this is where, as I pointed out, we have to do a lot of work to make sure that we can have a optimal experience for a customer, and it should be independent of whichever device they're using. And this is where the openness comes in. So we created an open RCS forum. We are one of the founding members, along with the other charter members. And what this forum is about is to have a open APIs to interact between the brands and the consumers, and then, of course, between the client and the platform. So that way we can have a very consistent experience among the consumers, independent of the device they're using, independent of the app they're using. And from the brands, it becomes a lot simpler that they can actually interact with the network with one common API, which can take care of different use cases as well as different channels. With that, I'll open up to questions.
But we'll start with the first question for Chris Chen. It says, what's Mavenir's strategy for the business messaging? Specifically, Chris is asking, would you rather engage directly with the brands or engage via the CSPs, so the operators? What's the preference for Mavenir then?
Yeah, so we sell to the operators, and we work with the operators to provide the capability to different brands. Of course, to enable the brands to work with the operators, we have interaction with the brands from a technology aspects as well, where they can make sure that interfaces are work and they're tested, verified. There are some instances in some markets we are working directly with brands, and that's because the operators want us to do it that way. So in some ways, depending upon the market, it could be working through an operator or directly with the brands, in combination with an operator.
But I assume, Pardeep, that you then describe these as a managed service, not a separate service alongside in competition with the CSPs.
That's correct.
Great. So there's an answer for Chris, and Chris, let us know if you would like to have more. But I'll jump to Jeff Reveal, and that says, Pardeep, you discuss messaging as a safe channel for consumers to engage with business. However, as OTT messaging system have trained users to expect end-to-end security or encryption, and the RCS standards not being able to encapsulate in that, are we not offering consumers a less private design experience? Question for you. Or should any consumer use RCS be considering less secure than other private messaging systems? So a specific question on RCS and specific questions OTT versus end-to-end encryption. Yeah,
so in a way, in some ways, whether SMS is safe or not, I guess the link between the handset and the network is safe on both sides. It's only that operator does get an access because it gets decrypted from operator side. So other than operators being able to see, not that they see it, I'm just saying from a technology perspective, that's really the difference. And as your data also pointed out, SMS is actually the least common denominator in how to interact with the phone using a phone number. So if I don't know what app somebody is using and I have their phone number, I can always send them a message and say hello. And that is always an accepted way of interaction. So definitely, I know there's a lot of marketing which the over-the-top guys do with end-to-end encryption and that aspect of it. But in other ways, right? SMS has been there for almost 27 years, and it's actually not that people can see each other messages. It's yes, and there's a decryption done by only on the operator side, but operator is actually a reliable partner in this.
And should also be saying that end-to-end encryption doesn't mean that the message is not decrypted by some parties.
Right,
it's you to have access for rightful, lawful intercept and so on. Some of these OTT players have engaged with different partners as well, so it's still possible. But
also on the other hand, right, if operator is still considered as safe from a consumer aspect, if I'm going to a certain website, an operator actually can validate and verify that this is a trusted chatbot, but that an operator has already verified it, I believe that will be much more valuable to a consumer as compared to not having that tick mark that this is not certified. So if the consumer is chatting with a chatbot and it somehow can come up with a tick mark saying verified by at least the operator, I believe that will still have a lot more value to a consumer rather than dealing arbitrarily with the chatbot.
That's great. And actually, Jeff was bringing up a very valid point. More on that. And the security of RCS, I think, will be discussed on the third day of our event, where we have a panel, including a lot of different experts as well. So I think stay tuned for more discussions. But I have a couple more of questions. More than a couple, I should say. I'll start with what's the RCS roadmap from now to the next 5 years as adaptation still lags from desired levels? This is a question from Mr. Maringanti.
Yeah, so in that sense, I think we are definitely relying on the community to actually, as I pointed out, not fragment in this. RCS a few years ago was all driven as a common entity with the full support from the operators. And I've seen over the last, I would say 12 to 18 months that there are fragments being created in the sense that now Google have their own RCS, and if Samsung does their own, then it will become more fragmented.
We seem to have a small audio. We're back. Sorry, we had a small audio interference. Please, Pardeep, continue.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, perfect now.
Yeah, so I think it's important to have actually a standardized interface and to be able to add capability into it and not fragment it. And so this is where I think if we're in a critical stage, in the sense that in the US market, at least the US operators have adopted all three big ones have adopted it, and we're seeing traction in Europe as well. But in rest of the world, of course, RCS has not been picked up because the over-the-top apps have taken over most of the market share there. So this is where I think it's a very important question on how can we keep the momentum going on the RCS roadmap, and it will not be possible unless somehow the interface between the handset and the network is kept open and doesn't become like a proprietary pipe between a set of I guess the devices, whether it's Samsung or some other device provider.
Great. Let me jump topic then. And as Nagasri Ralabadi is asking, Pardeep, I love a thought on the messaging. Just as a question, how much is this feasible on banking sector, where we handle some 1,000 plus clients and run on strict authentication requirements and other PII and PCI laws? So a direct request from an enterprise out there which says, I want to do more messaging, but how scalable it seems to be is it given the requirements on security?
Well, I mean, I of course use the capability, and of course banks are already using the two-factor authentication aspect, which comes through the message. So every time, say if I want to wire money, I get a short code, and then I have to take that and put it on this side. Now, the question is simply that once you have validated that channel, can it be further trusted to do more into it? And this is where, as I was talking about earlier, that if it comes with an extra blessing from an operator, that the link between the operator and the bank is if the consumers can trust that the link between an operator and the bank is trusted, the link between operator and the handset is trusted. Right? That's what the whole ecosystem is built on. That the encryption is there, and between the handset and the network, there's a secure link. If you can also assure between the operator and the network and the bank is assured, then of course the trust can be built.
Well, great. I think I have one more questions before I'll start asking a couple of mine, if you don't mind, which is, with so many third-party integrators, is it safe to say that unlike SMS users cannot expect any privacy for their communication or the metadata around who they message and how often, etc.? So question is, with the openness of the SMS world, how we letting some of the information leaking out of the operators and their partners?
Maybe I didn't understand the question. So SMS is still between two parties who want to interact, right? So I'm not sure where is the leakage point, in the sense that unless there's by the desire from the one party to forward, and that's where it's more of a human. That can happen with emails or any other communication, or even in WhatsApp, people can actually take a screenshot even if the forwarding is somehow not allowed and send it out. So this is where it depends on the two parties which are interacting with each other and how you can trust both of them.
Oh, great. Well, so let me ask you something else, not about the personal data, not about the OTT platforms or the enterprises so far. I'll ask you about the telecom operators. In your views, what they're thinking now. I see a big Mavenir 5G logo behind you. Which just reminds me, we're probably waiting for something quite substantial to change. Is that true? How is messaging going to be affected by 5G?
I think 5G definitely provides an opportunity. Now, it to some extent, it depends on operators on how they want to monetize it and how far they want to grow. And it depends on the markets. As I said, we definitely believe that in certain markets, operators actually have just given up and they just all left to the OTT players. But at least with 5G, the same way the OTT guys will take advantage, because now you have a bigger pipe, which means that the actual interaction can have a lot more richer component, right? So you can have, so when you're doing a interaction, you can also slip in video and people can actually see, a different multimedia experience rather than only textual experience. So those type of things will be possible. Now, it's up to really an operator to be able to monetize it. And this is where we definitely will provide them the technology aspect of it, right? And of course, they still have to market and sell it. And that's the unfortunate part, that so far they've not been good at, how to overtake the OTT players into this. But 5G does offer an opportunity which was not possible earlier.
Well, there is more than fun to come to telecom, it seems. But I'll ask you one, as we probably going to be finishing in a few seconds, but one final remarks for you. If you have to summarize the next 5 years for the telecom operators, what would you say that it's coming up there? What's their biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity?
This is how at least I see it, that it's unfortunate that, operators today, if you look at, just in US market, last month there was a C-band auction. Operators spend like over, $90 billion to acquire the spectrum. So if operators are spending billions of dollars to acquire spectrum, build the networks, and then, when iPhone comes, they also offer free iPhones so that consumers can stay on their network. That really means that all they have really figured out is that, okay, we can just build a good pipe and that's sufficient. So I think this is the first opportunity after a long time where they have an opportunity now to actually go up the chain and to be able to offer more value-added services to the consumers. As compared to, previous generation when they missed it.
We might have some problems. But Pardeep, you're back. Great.
Right. I don't know. Nobody's using the network. Let's see.
Well, there at least on the fixed one, we still have opportunity for improvement. But but thank you, I should say, Pardeep, for engaging with us and venturing all the different things they've thrown at you, the early rise, the challenges with the internet. Very much appreciated your commitment today and showing the way of what Mavenir thinks is coming next. So I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to thank all of Mavenir for being also a sponsor to helping us to bring this event to the public. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.